So I was getting into match analysis, and on the Capcom Fighters YouTube, I saw a comment that says, looking at the Zangief versus Dalsim matchup, reflecting Capcom has not made any effort on balancing over the last 4 years. They have made changes, but not balancing. Really hope people creating SFVI are not the same team from SF5. If you guys don't know what this is in reference to, in top 16 of CPT Online, Danny Pham, Zangief player, had to play against Commander Jesse, Dalsim, and he got smoked, right? It's a tough matchup. For Zangief to win against a character like Dalsim, it's going to be tough, right? So I saw after this happened, and then on Twitter, there was like a brief discussion about matchups, and I saw people saying like, are the matchups in Street Fighter V better or worse than in Street Fighter 4's bad matchups? Which I thought was interesting because I think most people would probably say it's the opposite, right? It's like a much more universally built games. Like frame data is more consistent across the game. A lot of characters are built more similarly. For one, people I guess don't seem to remember how many matchups in Street Fighter 4 were just brutal, right? Like, yeah, you guys bring up a good one. Gouken versus Hugo, or Gouken versus Zangief, or Gouken versus like any of the large characters, T-Hawk or something like that, right? Gouken has straight, mid, and like high fireballs, right? So you can throw them straight, diagonal, and a slight angle, diagonal up, and you can charge them, and they hit multiple times, and they push you back. Gouken against those characters, it was so bad. Then you have Rose versus Gouken. Rose has a projectile reflect, and she just always reflects Gouken. He like can't throw fireballs against her. She has a fireball, and she can just projectile reflect. His main game plan is like button, fireball, sweep. He has like a demon flip as well, but she has really good ways to deal with that, right? She focus backdash when she sees it, or she can slide under it or something. Yeah, she could slide under his mid fireball. Like, like what are you gonna do? It's so bad. Or there's matchups like Yun versus Dalsim, right? Guile versus Elena. Elena destroyed Rose, by the way. I thought that was Elena's best matchup. She like could not make drill safe against Elena, and her anti-projectile moves are incredibly good. And you know, the kind of attrition game plan Rose wants to play, not good against a character with a heal. Now that being said, are there bad matchups in Street Fighter V? Absolutely, right? Are there some that are brutal? For sure. The point about this that I was going to make is that generally in fighting games, these kinds of matchups will always exist. There is no amount of like balancing down here that you're going to do that will eliminate these kinds of archetypes struggling against each other, and that's okay. That's not a problem. If a zoning character cannot beat the big, slow grappler character, there's probably something wrong. Either the zoning character just has like really bad zoning, or the grappler character has just like, they just get in so easily. They have to have a chance against the zoner, obviously, but it should probably be a hard matchup. And it's the same reason the zoning character should probably struggle against the rushdown character, right? But if they play very well, they can win. It's the same kind of idea. If Dalsim doesn't do badly against characters that just blow him up and get in, that's probably a bad thing. And if Zangief doesn't struggle to get in against a character like Dalsim, that's probably not right. Those are just the designs of the characters. Are there times where like a character gets blown out really badly in some kind of matchup and they could need help? Sure. KI had an example of this. Aghanos is like a big, slow character. You know, he struggled with zoning characters, but he also struggled with a character like Sadira, who's just like this really annoying, aggressive character who approaches from the air. And so what they did to help him out is they gave him an anti-air flick. He had Potemkin flick, which is just, you know, it beats projectiles, gets rid of them. So what they gave him was back plus light punch, and it was an anti-air flick. He just flicked up. So when she would approach with her air projectile, he could flick it, right? And he could try to use it to anti-air her. Didn't do a lot of damage, but it would, you know, hit the projectile, hit her, and knock her down. Did that make it so that Aghanos, like, beat zoning characters suddenly? No. In fact, he's still going to struggle against a lot of zoning characters. But that was like a purposeful buff to try to help him in that matchup, or matchups with, you know, where air projectiles are really good. Like Maya could abuse air projectiles, jump and throw daggers at him, and he would just get bombarded, and he had no way to deal with it. He was just dying. But that kind of change, I think, is fine. You still want a character that like Aghanos, or a big body like Zangief or Hugo or somebody like that. You still want them to have a little bit of trouble with zoning characters. But anyway, yeah, when I think about balance in modern games, it's usually much, much better than most of the older games that I played. And when I say older, I don't even mean games that are like 20 years old. I mean games that were the game before this. You know what I mean? Like thinking back to Street Fighter 4. And at the time, we thought that those games were very well balanced compared to the games before them. You know, it sort of keeps going back. Anyway, when I see a comment like this, like, look, Zangief is allowed to struggle against a zoning character. But if you're a Zangief player, you know, if you're playing in tournament, it's probably useful to have a character that beats somebody like Dalsim, right? I mean, and that's what everybody recommended. Basically, everybody was like, hey, Danny, you gotta play another character. They're like, you need another character to beat Dalsim, dude. There's just some matchups where Zangief is not gonna get in. and that's one of them. If you are playing a secondary, it should be because whatever characters you want to use the secondary in are very good in your bad matchups, right? Because you're going to have put less time into them than your main character, so you'll be probably less used to them, so you want their matchups to be pretty advantageous. This YouTube comment is like saying rock and rock, paper, scissors. It needs to be rebalanced because it beats scissors, but it gets destroyed by paper. Yeah. As a strong player, if you're traveling around the world, you don't just want to get walled out in tournament in one bad matchup. So having a backup plan is very smart, because so much of like winning in like a competitive environment is like a large factor of things. But if one of the factors is just like you have to have a bracket where you don't run into X or Y character or you automatically lose, what are the chances that you don't run into that character or characters that give you trouble, or somebody doesn't pick that character against you or learn that character? It's important to think about that. Listen, Hanzo Gonzo, how do I vote? Are you voting for Hanzo Gonzo? For what? What office is he trying to hold? Orc Ambassador Hanzo Gonzo. You know, it finally happened. We found some orcs on our D&D session. Now we're gonna have to see if Hanzo can hold it together.